Hey everybody, it's Tiffany and I'm back with yet another video about, you guessed it, Asians. Oh, that's so dumb, hold on! Hey everybody, it's Tiffany and I'm back with another video. So as you can tell by the title, we're gonna be talking about something a lot of you are familiar with. K-pop. Before we get started, I do want to let you guys know that this video is sponsored by the amazing Culture Media. That's Culture with a K. They're an active media watchdog for Asian American representation. I personally really love Culture because they extend the opportunity to you. On their website, there's an area you can submit your own Asian American offenses. You can also follow their Twitter at Culture Watchdog, where they tweet and retweet amazing sources of Asian American representation in media. And so if you are a fan of my channel, I know you will be a fan of Culture as well. I'll link all their media down below, and don't forget to follow them on Twitter and visit their website and even report your own offense if there's something you're thinking about. Without further ado, let's get on to the video and talk about the Korean wave versus the British invasion. What is the Korean wave and what is the British invasion? Well, let me tell you! So around the 1960s, a band called the Beatles rose to fame. They branched off beyond the UK and they made amazing music and everyone was obsessing over them and it was amazing, and they were one of the biggest musical artists in the world and still are. The Korean wave, however, has been recently taking the world by storm through artists like Psy, BTS, and all of these people who are breaking barriers coming into Western media just as the Beatles had. But there is a huge difference between the British invasion of the Beatles and One Direction and everything, and the Korean wave with BTS and Psy and Big Bang. The Beatles rose to fame easily, first of all because they did speak English, so it was already easy to connect with overseas fans from the West. With One Direction, it was a lot more recent, and they rose to fame through the X Factor, which was through a form of media, through television and YouTube, and how everyone started watching these videos and seeing their competitions, and then they ended up going on world tour. They were one of the most successful bands in the world. That's great and that's amazing, and like the Beatles, they were from the UK and they did speak English, so it was easy to break barriers. British bands like the Beatles and One Direction, it was easy for them to get into American media, into Western media, because they were basically placed in a situation where they were set up for success almost. But with bands that have broken the Korean wave like BTS, Big Bang, and Psy, it's such a competitive industry within Korea itself that it's amazing that they even made it across borders and overseas. BTS and bands in Korea, they have to go through a training program, and there's a huge competitive process within Korea itself. It's harder for Korean bands and Asian bands in general to get into American media because they don't speak English and they need subtitles on their videos and their songs aren't in English. We don't know off the top of our heads what they're saying or what they're singing, and it's such a different industry. Their simultaneous dancing and singing and their concepts of their music videos. It's a different culture that you have to immerse yourself in. Asian pop culture and Western pop culture are so different. The way they act and present themselves, the programs they participate in, the songs they sing even, it's a different culture, it's a different type of media. And so for BTS to break barriers like that and get on the cover of Billboard and get to perform at the American Music Awards, that's amazing. And if you're not aware, Western media is completely dominant over any type of media. This is what everyone's looking to. This is where we set the standards because unfortunately we are a Eurocentric world. And because I've grown up Asian American, I've grown up watching, these country singers on the AMAs, all those amazing things, but seeing people who didn't look like me and seeing people who were idolized for me as people I could never be, instead of seeing an Asian on TV and being like, okay, I could be that person too. Because growing up, I never saw someone like me on a music show. I never saw someone like me on television. I never thought I could be that person. But having these inspirations as Asians on Western media, breaking barriers, getting through their own countries, having to rise to fame within their own small Korean industry was hard enough in and of itself, that rising to fame in a different overseas country that speaks a different language that is completely dominant in pop culture, that's freaking amazing. And something we have to look to for both of these, the British invasion and the Korean wave, is the influx of fans in such a short amount of time. All these fans just started piling and piling, and it's the hype of having this new band to look up to and having this new music to listen to that just makes it so amazing. I haven't mentioned many girl groups because people like the Spice Girls or like Girls' Generation. Unfortunately, this industry is very controversial in a sense where there is such a gap between the amount of female fans and male fans. And of course that comes from toxic masculinity and everything, and that's just a whole new video I can get to on gender and sexism and discrimination. But having all these female fans, it does add to the hype. According to cultural stereotypes, we are the ones who display our emotions while males are the ones who keep it all in. They feel the need to assert masculinity against these boy groups who are taking attention away from the reality of men in our lives because we're so busy idolizing these bands, that it does perpetuate some sort of stereotype of sexism. And if you're found liking these bands, then you feel less masculine and everything. And unfortunately, that's how our Western culture works, and that's probably how the Beatles and One Direction and BTS and all of these male bands have come to rise, regardless of Korean Wave, regardless of British invasion. It's because this increase of female fans idolizes and glorifies these new male celebrities so much that it makes their fame seem even more important than it truly is, because they're the only men we're looking to, and we're ignoring those around us because we're only paying attention to the ones on TV and on screen. So that does add to their own exposure to media. But the Beatles and One Direction had a very masculine appearance. The Beatles manager said in order to gain more fame, they styled the men in a way that would attract more female fans for an increase in sales and fame, and that's just the strategy of the industry. Appeared as they would, they looked as men would in Western media, and they attracted all these female fans because they looked a certain way and because these fans were attracted to this masculine appearance. But if you look to bands from Korea and like Asia, you know, the men wear makeup and like eyeshadow, and people criticize their, and I quote, androgynous appearance, looking like females, and that's a lot of the hate they receive. But thinking about it, these men that many Western viewers dismiss as androgynous celebrities have broken barriers into the Western media, even with their differences in culture. But BTS is breaking more barriers than race. The way they look, the stereotypes that they face for not looking like masculine people, they face a lot of pressure, not only being Asian, but also facing all this hate about wearing makeup and how they're dressed and styled. They're setting examples of individuality. And I'm not saying the Beatles and One Direction didn't do that, but it's just a very different culture, because here's BTS, these Asian men who are androgynous in appearance and speak a completely different language. And then here's the Beatles and One Direction who speak English, and they're super talented, but they do have advantages because they do look more masculine. They've already grown up in this Western culture that makes them assimilate to, okay, I want to look like a real man. I want to be a real man. But I feel like BTS and all these Asian acts, with coming in with a different culture, they are redefining these stereotypes. The fact that BTS has made it on stage and off stage, on covers and within magazines is amazing, spectacular. I walk into the market and I see BTS on the cover of Billboard and like Tiger Beat. Regardless of how the magazine is, they're on the cover of something in America, and it's so easily accessible for someone like me, just a normal Asian American girl going to buy her groceries, seeing these Asian people on magazines that once never had Asian people ever. That's amazing. And I think that especially in America, because we are raised in such a Eurocentric community, we learn to idolize and glorify the American industry. Growing up, what we don't hear about is people from other countries. We're constantly working for representation. It's not a thing right here and now, just because it's gaining attention, but that's great and we need this attention. But honestly, it's been happening for years and we just haven't noticed it. Oh my gosh, and the last thing I want to hear is someone asking BTS, are you ever going to make an album in English?
Will you guys produce a whole album in English?
Will we produce the whole album in English?
Yeah.
That's the question?
Because, honey, when I heard that, I popped off. the cap flew off. I was like, excuse me? Did you just ask them to make a whole album in English? Because the thing is, maybe you're just ignorant, but BTS is a Korean band. They were raised in Korea. They rose to fame within the Korean industry. They trained in the Korean entertainment companies. They debuted in Korea. They never debuted in America. An album in English, it was just like, are you serious? Like, that's not their industry. Their fame from America came by chance. We chose them. They didn't choose us. BTS alone did not strategize to debut in America and get all this fame. They didn't even expect it. BTS is not trying to be a Western group. They are breaking barriers as a Korean group. They are giving us so much representation. They are facing racism and discrimination. That's life, and that's what we need to fix, and that's why we need representation in our community. We grow up watching artists of so many different backgrounds, but we never grow up watching anybody of Asian descent. I don't remember seeing probably 1 or 2 Asian musical acts besides Far East Movement with G6 in like, what, 2008? I didn't even know they were Asian. But being able to walk into a grocery store and to see someone's Asian face on a magazine is so powerful. Being able to acknowledge that an artist is Asian without having them hide it and be ashamed of it is powerful, especially growing up Asian American, where you're put into a community where it feels like you're alone, where it feels like there's no one in media to represent you, where it feels like there's so many ignorant people portraying you like you're something you're not. Asian American families and the community in and of itself, we're never encouraged to make it in media because our parents always say, that's not dependable, you're never gonna make it, there are no Asians on TV. But we need to be the generation that breaks these barriers and puts ourselves out there. Be yourself, to represent yourself, to be proud of who you are and to do what you want is the most important part of media and fame, and the most important part of BTS, breaking cultural barriers. All these stereotypes that hold them back from succeeding, guess what? They've succeeded. They've done this, and they're continuing to break barriers. This isn't even about the Korean industry and the bands within it. It's about the representation for Asian Americans. And so the importance of the Korean wave versus the British invasion is the racial representation that we're having. And that's the whole point of it. It's so special to so many Asian Americans. The Beatles are great, but they're white men. I'm not a white man. I want to see Asian women, men in the media telling me that I can do it because they can do it. I want to see them breaking barriers, that I don't have to face discrimination. So I respect both, but the importance of BTS is their breaking of barriers. It's about who they are and how they make other people feel, and that's the most important part of being an artist and being someone who loves what they're doing. I just popped off. Oh my god, I'm out of breath. So that concludes today's video, and I want to thank you so much for listening because this was a super fun video, especially because I collaborated with Culture. I actually found this idea after one of the articles they retweeted on their Twitter. So Culture is a very, very good source of Asian American representation and inspiration. Don't forget, that's Culture with a K. You can follow them at Twitter at Culture Watchdog, or I'll link their website down below. And I'll also link my social media links down below if you want to follow me on Instagram or Twitter. That would be amazing. And stay tuned, stay updated. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and comment down below what you want to see next. Please subscribe if you liked my content, or don't if you didn't. Thank you for sticking with me through all of it, and I promise I will be back posting consistent videos soon. I love you guys. Thank you for supporting me. Signing off, Tifa P.